allow screen sharing. So welcome everybody. This is the first webinar of our Sustainable Materials Management series. And it is a collaboration between the UVI Caribbean Green Technology Center, VI Waste Management Authority, the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, and US Environmental Protection Agency. And we're really excited for this collaborative effort and really excited to get into today's webinar, where we're going to be talking about what's happening with solid waste in the US Virgin Islands. So each agency is going to take turns speaking about their role in this, in this challenge of dealing with all the materials that we have in the Virgin Islands. So hopefully I'm able to share my screen now. And just want to confirm that everyone can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so as I mentioned, today's webinar is about what's happening with solid waste in the USVI. And we are planning to have a series of webinars. So every week, we will, on Wednesday, you can tune in to listen to different topics. So this week, next week, we will be discussing the waste audit or waste characterization, and also the sustainable materials market analysis. So each waste stream, we're looking at how much of it exists in the USVI and what we can do with it. On the third week, we will be looking at islands across the world and what innovative solutions they've come up with for materials management. And finally, our final webinar is actually going to be a conversation with the community. So we've told you about what we have here now, and what some other places are doing. And we want to think, okay, how can we get there? And so looking at what we want and what are the steps to get there. And so this will be hosted by the UVI Creativity Lab, which focus on creative problem solving. So just a few rules. When you join, for the beginning, we will have different presenters speaking. So just please mute and keep the video off. At the end, we will have a question and answer time. And so then we will encourage you to ask your questions. You can unmute or use the chat for this. And we encourage participation, but at the end. And finally, the webinar is being recorded. And we will post this recording online. So if you have any objections, then I would recommend not turning on your video and not muting, and your name and video will not be included in the recording. So today's agenda, first, what words come to mind when you think of solid waste in your own words? Then we have the federal overview from the US Environmental Protection Agency, the regulatory overview from the VI Department of Planning and Natural Resources, the operational overview from the VI Waste Management Authority, and finally the system overview from the University of Virgin Islands Caribbean Green Technology Center. So this is a bit interactive. And so we're going to be creating a word cloud with what words come to mind when you think of solid waste in the Virgin Islands. So you can go to this website and type in the code to participate in the poll. So you go to menti.com and type in this code here. Greg, maybe you can put this code in the chat so people can access it easily. And
Yes,
you'll get,
I will make the code in the chat.
It will look something like this.
Aya, can you put the code again? So
And can you
put it in the
out?
chat?
Can you just read it out?
6991.
Yeah, 69913728. So when you click submit, then it should take you to this page. So we can start to see some of the words that people are coming up with.
What is the site we go to?
www.menti.com.
I put it in the chat, menti.com. And the code is in the chat as well, 69913728.
So hopefully we will touch on some of these words that come to mind today in the presentation. And if not today, then throughout the month with our Sustainable Materials Management series. So this is going to stay open, and we're hoping that we can kind of look back at our final conversation back on these different word clouds and see maybe how our perceptions may have changed or how they may have stayed the same over time. So I'm just going to go back to the presentation and hand it over to the first speaker. Before that, I just wanted to give an overview of the different agencies in charge of waste management. So many of these will be speaking today. So first, EPA is the federal side. They're in charge of oversight as well as providing technical assistance. Then we have DPNR, which is takes a regulatory role as well as oversight and enforcement of the different regulations. VI Waste Management is really in charge of management of waste, operations, as well as enforcement of the laws. The Department of Public Works is in charge of emergency operations, so debris removal and road clearing, and also some of the infrastructure involved. And then finally, there are many NGOs working on this as well, which provides support to the system as well as advocacy and awareness. So now I'd like to pass it on to EPA, to Kamiko.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring what the issues are and what the solutions could be together. I like to say many hands make a light load, and I'm really excited about this opportunity to gather everybody together. I am going to be presenting with my colleague Zeno Bain, who's the sustainability advisor for the Virgin Islands, and we're excited to share with you some of the overarching views of what's happening a little bit in the VI and also sort of nationally and globally. Next slide, please. So our EPA Sustainable Materials Management hierarchy focuses on source reduction and reuse. That's our highest level of the hierarchy. So wherever possible, reduce the amount of material wastes that are being generated. And that is the highest, and those yield the maximum environmental and public health benefits. Reuse is sort of our next level of the hierarchy. And that can be repair, resale, repair, repurposing, and so forth. Then recycling and composting are the next level. So that would be taking materials in their form, let's say plastic, and melting them down and creating new plastic. Ideally, it's better to not even have to go through that processing step. So that's why it's below reuse in terms of the hierarchy. And composting is also considered part of recycling, where you're taking organic material and it's breaking down and forming nutrients. Energy recovery is next. That could be anaerobic digestion or biodiesel. And then treatment and disposal, this is the least preferred. This is like basically landfilling, where you're really losing the valuable natural resources and embodied energy in those in the original materials. Next slide, please. I think you're all probably quite familiar with some of the materials management issues in the VI. Of course, there was some long delayed program approval, but the USVI has program approval now. So this enables the VI to expand existing landfills, create new landfills, use alternative daily cover, and a variety of other operational flexibilities that are afforded to states with RCRA Subtitle D Municipal Solid Waste Landfill Permit Program approval. I know that's a mouthful. As you know, there's only two existing two existing disposal locations. They're both subject to various enforcement orders. They're at or almost at or over capacity, and they have operational challenges. That's why the program approval was so important, because now we can sort of start fresh and create new cells or new landfills that hopefully will have maximum waste diversion, so they will last for a long time. But that's going to take all of us working together. And in the past, there have been limited waste diversion programs, and we're certainly going to all work together on that. I know that the Waste Management Authority is working diligently at finding alternatives for all these different materials, and we're all working together on that. And we look to the public as well for any ideas. Historic underfunding. Congress had originally intended for solid waste to be a state-run program, so we don't provide the same level of funding that we do for some of the other programs like water and hazardous waste. So that's why it's so important to have a steady funding stream, which I think Waste Management is going to talk about a little bit later in terms of user fees or tipping fees. And then here we have no tipping fees, or there's no source, or there hasn't been no source of sustainable revenue to maintain and expand the materials management operations in the VI. So these are some of the issues. And we're next slide, please. So I know this is a long list. I'm just going to quickly go through. We've been providing technical assistance and funding where we can. Primarily, we've been working with DPNR, Waste Management, the Housing and Finance Authority, which administers the HUD Cdbg Community Development Block Grant funding, the Office of Disaster Recovery, and the University of Virgin Islands, of course. We approved the landfill permit program in 2019. We're responsible for ensuring federal landfill standards, minimum landfill standards that are codified in 40 CFR Part 258 are complied with. We provide technical guidance, and this is one area where we're heavily focused right now, the $10 million supplemental grant to USVI and DPNR. After Hurricane Maria, as you know, there was a lot of federal funding that came to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, and it was divvied up amongst all the different agencies. EPA received a portion of that money and has allocated $10 million to help support sustainable materials management, and that's being divided between DPNR and Waste Management. So we're assisting with the development of those programs through that grant program. We maintain a sustainability advisor with which is Zeno Bain. He's on the call, and you'll be hearing from him in the Virgin Islands. We have funded and assist with the development of the UVI waste characterization study, which we'll go into a little bit later, and we'll also have a deeper dive in our subsequent webinar. We did a VI commodities market analysis. We're now calling it.
Kimiko, your sound is getting a little bit distorted.
Oh, I'm not sure. Can you hear me now?
Not very well, but keep going.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where was I? I'm sorry. We're assisting FEMA with the public assistance and hazard mitigation funding of solid waste activities. With UVI is responsible for that. We're coordinating with the HUD Cdbg disaster recovery and mitigation funding. And we're trying to revive RECARIB, which was the wider Caribbean Solid Waste Management Association. We're working with other islands to help crowdsource ideas of sustainable materials management from around the world and see what might be possible in the VI. Exploring the intersectionality of sectors and symbiotic collaborative opportunities like constructed wetlands for wastewater and anaerobic digestion. And we're trying to assist with the development of the USVI Integrated Sustainable Materials Management Plan. Next slide, please. Hello.
So now Zeno will be talking about his
sorry.
role as sustainability officer. Is he on the call? Zeno,
Sorry, I needed to hit
okay.
*6, so now I'm unmuted. So
Okay,
good afternoon. This is Zeno Bain. I'm the Sustainability Advisor for EPA, supporting FEMA disaster recovery efforts. I've been in the territory in the VI, in St. Croix specifically for the last year and a half. And as you can see on this slide here, there's a number of areas that we work on to support disaster recovery. So I won't go into details on each of these priorities, and there's a number of partners that we work with in the territory. I think the main point, and Kimiko touched on a couple of the primary sources of funding that's supporting sustainable materials management, such as funding for siting and opening a new landfill, funding from EPA for composting, recycling. But I think the main point I want to show in these other areas that you see here on the slide is that there's a number of other opportunities to reduce materials going to the landfill, reduce waste, and recycle waste. And through the work with federal partners in disaster recovery, there's a number of other funding sources. So we also, not included on this slide, but I also work with the federal partners that are supporting disaster recovery, and some of those have been mentioned, such as Economic Development Association, EDA, USDA, Department of Interior. So these are some of the federal agencies that have a number of programs to support the territory, not just through the direct ways that we just mentioned, but also through technical capacity assistance and potentially other potential funding sources to support composting, recycling, waste diversion. But also what I'd like to mention is that in the work as sustainability advisor, as we increase sustainability in these other sectors, as you see here, for example, the built environment or utilities, and we see the power poles being installed, the newer power poles that should be more resilient to the hurricanes. And as we continue to increase resilience in our utilities, the wastewater lines, even the coral reefs to mitigate storm surge, and other methods to reduce sort of redundant projects that create more waste through collaboration. So there's a number of ways that we may not immediately think about for reducing and diverting waste from the landfill. And some of those things we can think about, and I can think about and try to promote through the other projects that we work on in increasing sustainability, as you can see in this list here. So I think that's it that I have here on this slide. I think just wanted to recap, and the following slide here recaps some of the funding sources that we've talked about. I think we've touched on the $10 million assistance for solid waste management going to DPNR and waste management. And you can see some of the other funding sources from EPA for the Superfund program and the underground storage tank, which are not directly, as I mentioned, but could have benefits for increasing resiliency. And the Clean Water Act construction grants, again, and also not directly for sustainable materials management, but I wanted to include these for you so you can see some of the other work that we're doing, again, in just increasing resiliency in the territory. The main one, of course, that's listed here is the HUD Cdbg funding, the Community Development Fund, and which is the 1.8 billion. And of that, Kamiko touched on the funding that's being allocated for the landfill. So again, I touched on it previously, some of the other programs through EDA and USVI that can assist in how they may increase resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now Kamiko is going to go through a few of pictures of a few of the different programs to highlight. But I just wanted to point out to Kamiko that we only have 2 minutes for this. So
yeah, I will
Okay.
definitely pick up the pace. Next slide, please. So we're working with the Office of Disaster Recovery on the disaster debris planning efforts to update the disaster debris plan with Michael Vante and his fabulous colleagues and at ODR and the Department of Public Works and Waste Management and VITEMA. So thank you all for that. A revised version will be coming up soon. Next slide, please. The waste characterization study. This is phenomenal work by University of Virgin Islands, and that will be out shortly. But this was a deep dive into the residential waste stream in the USVI, and we'll be highlighting that in the next webinar next week. And this one, the materials management analysis. So this looked at the waste characterization report and explored opportunities all over the that are happening all over the world in terms of how people are using these materials in a more sustainable way. So that's going to be an exciting discussion. And I just wanted to show the what's happening here on the right. Everything, a lot of these materials most of these materials are going to the landfill. So the question is, how can we capture these resources, which are valuable commodities that can preserve resources, create green jobs, and help build resilience and sustainability? So a lot of this is incorporated into that report. And again, that's next week. So please join us for next week. Next slide, please. And in that report, we looked at a number of different things. I won't go through it here, but we tried to put as many metrics as possible in terms of opportunities that those materials represent. Next slide, please. And we're trying to move from what is a linear economy right now, from production, consumption, and disposal, to a circular economy, and how we can have those materials keep cycling through our materials management stream to provide maximum benefit and maximum opportunity. Next slide, please. And some of the things we also evaluated are the opportunity of or the possibility of having a reuse innovation center in the VI. We would be able to capture a lot of the materials that are currently going to the landfill and possibly repairing them, reselling them, redesigning them, repurposing them. There'll be a classroom, potentially a classroom and an art space. And the food recovery hierarchy, I put this on because we are investing a lot of effort to capturing the organics, the food waste, as well as the green waste. And with the food waste, we're definitely trying to feed hungry people, feed animals, explore industrial uses like anaerobic digestion, explore composting to replenish the soil, and provide engineering, erosion control, and filtration. Next slide, please. We had a sustainable materials management island speaker series, and we had, you can look through these later, but we had speakers from all over the world, and we're going to be highlighting that in the third webinar and all that we learned from islands across the world. Next slide, please. we have a grant to Island Green Living and Build Reuse to work on building a deconstruction training program. So that should be hopefully starting soon. The pandemic has put things a little bit on hold, but look for some opportunities to participate in that and learn how to deconstruct and reuse those materials rather than sending them to the landfill. Next slide, please. ReCarib, this is the Wider Caribbean Solid Waste Management Association. We're trying to help resuscitate this and join forces with potentially with our Pacific neighbors and many islands across the world to see how we can all help share resources, come up with best management practices, and find solutions together. Next slide, please. And that's it. That's my contact information. Zeno's contact information is the bain.zeno@epa.gov. And thank you so much for your time. Many hands make a light load, and I encourage you to stay engaged and participate in the upcoming webinars. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that was from US EPA, and now we're going to move on to more local context from the Department of Planning and Natural Resources. So we'll be hearing from Director Austin Callwood.
Thank you, Ariel. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Commissioner Jean-Pierre Oriol, Commissioner of the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, I welcome you to today's Earth Day presentation. I am Austin Callwood, Director of the Environmental Protection Division. The Department of Planning and Natural Resources, next slide, please, is comprised of 10 distinct divisions: business and administration, environmental enforcement, building permits administration and inspection, coastal zone management, comprehensive coastal zone planning, libraries, archives, museums administration, fish and wildlife, environmental protection, Virgin Islands State Historic Preservation Office, and Council of the Arts. That's a mouthful. The Environmental Protection Division, which I'm responsible for, is responsible for the management and oversight of the laws and regulations designed to protect and keep the air clean, water clean, and our territorial land in the territory clean. In the area of sustainable material management, the division administers the solid waste and hazardous waste programs for the territory. This includes developing, promulgating, implementing, and enforcing the applicable rules and regulations relevant to the management of solid waste, solid and hazardous waste. Next slide. DPNR has worked closely with US EPA, VI Waste Management, and Department of Public Works and other agencies to develop and implement a sustainable solid waste material management strategy. Part of that was seeking and receiving in 2019 our Resource Conservation Recovery Act, RCRA, Subtitle B delegation you've heard of before, which allows us to permit our own landfills. This is significant in that it puts it in our hands now to select, design, site, and regulate our landfills. Obviously, it's still a last resort, last part of the program that we're working on, and our objective obviously is also to reduce the amount of valuable materials that we put in that landfill. Also in 2019, we applied for and received the $10 million State and Territories Assistance Grant, the STAG Grant Award, which you'll also hear quite a bit about. Portion was allotted to DPNR, will be used to review and amend and develop, revise, and adopt regulations to increase our capacity to sort our reduce our impact on the landfill. And the program mandates that we conduct inspections on our solid waste disposal sites, which will include landfills, transfer stations, and our satellite collection stations, which are the bins we see about the territory. Next slide. That $10 million STAG grant that everybody's mentioning is split in two ways. $4 million goes to DPNR for the administration and development of the program, including titling, permitting rather the landfill, both new, the current or existing ones, and for the closure of the landfills when they have reached their useful life. One of the goals of sustainable solid waste management is, particularly here in a territory where the natural resource land is limited and disposal options are severely restricted, is to reduce the amount of valuable material that goes into the landfills. We believe that this will be probably one of our biggest community challenges, one that each Virgin Islander will have to come to terms with. We're not very good at, or rather, we are too good at throwing things away, and again, impacting the quality of life and the effect on our landfills, which are rapidly approaching their useful life. And that will be to embrace ways to repurpose, reuse, and reduce and recycle those materials. That, I believe, will be our biggest challenge. However, this promises to be an exciting time as we gear up to undertake that challenge for the territory, and that is efficiently processing all of our waste streams. The last part of it is the $6 million, which is the bulk of it and allotted to waste management, and they'll discuss that in more detail, is more on the execution side of our waste stream. And they also talk a little bit about those diversion programs that will help us not have to fill the landfills. That's it, Ariel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that information, Director Colwood. Now we will be moving on to the presentation from Virgin Islands Waste Management Authority. This will be presented by Alex Bruni. So you can take it away.
Good morning. On behalf of Executive Director, Mr. Roger Merritt, I am pleased to present this webinar to you guys. I am Alex Bruni, Senior Staff Engineer for the Waste Management Authority. Next slide. The Virgin Islands Waste Management Authority was created in January of 2004 by Act 6630H, which amended Title 29 of the Virgin Islands Code and adding Chapter 8, establishing the authority as a fully autonomous nonprofit instrumentality of the Virgin Islands government. Then Governor Turnbull proposed legislation to create a separate entity that exercised control over all aspects of waste management, including solid waste, wastewater, and residential septic systems. If folks remember, over 20 years ago, waste management was managed by the Department of Public Works. Public Works, having a vast number of responsibilities, wasn't really focused primarily on waste management of the territory. By Governor Turnbull's intention or hope, by creating this new authority, it would address the cumulative harmful effects of improper disposal of oil and solid waste, groundwater, landfill fires fueled by improperly vented methane gas, groundwater contamination caused by landfill leachate, in addition to the crumbling sewer system collection and transportation system. In addition to the discharge of untreated or partially treated wastewater into the surrounding seawaters. Back then, we had a lot going on. Frequent downage of our pump stations, frequent breakages of our collection system, fires at the landfills. It was a lot at that time. By combining all aspects of municipal solid waste management in a single oversight agency, the governor sought to create an organization structure to advance modern and responsive waste management designed to bring the Virgin Islands into compliance with the Federal Emergency Protection Agency guidelines. This was done by the amendment of Title 29 by the addition of Chapter 8. removing all functions specific to waste management from the Department of Public Works and transferring it to the responsibility directly to the Virgin Islands Waste Management Authority. We are mandated to operate and maintain wastewater and solid waste collection, treatment, and disposal services to protect the public health and preserve the environment of the Virgin Islands. Our vision is to be the most efficient, effective, and fiscally responsible waste management agency in the entire Caribbean. In doing so, our core values are strong towards safety utmost for our employees and the residents of the Virgin Islands. We have a compliance team, a wonderful compliance team that ensures that we remain in compliance on both on the wastewater, on solid waste side of our operation, and teamwork. Teamwork is the key in doing everything. We try to make our customers happy, satisfy our responsibilities to the community in the most cost-effective manner. Waste management, also known as VIW. Next slide, please. We provide wastewater services for approximately 60% of the Virgin Islands. Wastewater, as we define it, is any water contaminated by human use. This liquid may or may not contain organic solids originating from homes and businesses. However, if this untreated water is discharged into the environment, it will create diseases and a nuisance to the public. I've often told folks that if the employees of waste management were not doing our job correctly, the amount of diseases that would have broken out within our territory, the Department of Health and the hospital staff would not be able to control the amount of sickness that would have occurred as a result. So again, every time I get a chance to speak publicly, I thank the staff of Waste Management for doing such an excellent job in protecting our environment. Next slide, please. Our wastewater infrastructure. In the St. Croix district, we are comprised of approximately 102 miles of wastewater pipelines. Those pipelines are transferred to the treatment plant, is assisted by 3 major pump stations and 12 small pump stations. Now, the smaller pump stations, if you think about it as the system as a vessel, the smaller pump stations basically take the wastewater from smaller basins like Montbijou, Concordia, and the smaller residence areas, and transport it to the area where the major pump stations picks it up and then transports it to the treatment plant. If you're familiar with St. Croix, we start off with the LBJ pump station. The wastewater is then pumped to a certain point where it's then fed by gravity to the Fig Tree pump station, and then pumped to the Anguilla treatment plant. On the west side of things, everything is diverted to the Lagoon Street pump station and then pumped to the treatment plant as well. On the St. Thomas and John side of things, similarly, we have over 300 miles of collection system. The difference between the St. Thomas and John district and the St. Thomas district is that we have approximately 7 pump stations in this district. The difference for that is because of our terrain. It's kind of impossible to have everything pumped to one pump station as a result of our hills and our terrains that we have on this side. Of the 8 treatment plants that we have territorially, I am proud to say that 6 of those pump stations are managed, controlled, and operated by waste management staff and employees. We have certified treatment plant operators that do an excellent job in maintaining control and operation of those plants and meeting the TPT's requirements. On the solid waste side of our operations, in St. Croix district, we have 3 major bin sites: Concordia, Montbijou, Cotton Valley. In addition to a transfer station, scale house, and 1 convenience center, which is a Peter convenience center. Similarly, on the island or the district of St. Thomas and St. John, again, we have 51 bin sites. We have the Mandal Convenience Center, the scale house at Bovoni, and a gas energy building located at our Bovoni landfill. Again, the difference between the number of bin sites in both districts has a lot to do with the terrain. We could do a lot more house-to-house pickup in St. Croix because it's a nice flat terrain, versus in the St. Thomas and John district, it's kind of difficult to get into the smaller areas with the solid waste trucks. So it's a lot more easier to have these bin sites where folks could deposit the waste into the various bin sites. St. John, we have the Susannaburg transfer station. We also have a few bin sites in St. John as well. We basically collect approximately 200 tons a day on the island of St. Croix, and in the St. Thomas and John district, roughly about 300 tons per day combined. The collection of solid waste is done in-house by our staff, and we also is assisted by contractual waste haulers. I know throughout the years we have often heard about the concerns about the capacity of our landfills. Well, it's difficult to give a real sense of when we will be exhausted in those landfills. Although we are close to capacity, the extension of the life of each landfill is continuing to increase because of the various diversion programs that we have been implemented over the years. And we'll continue to, as time goes on, implement new diversion programs in order to divert waste away from our landfills. Next slide. Problematic materials. Waste, tires, electronic waste, and used oils are all concerning issues within the territory due to the improper disposal by our residents. Although we have a household hazardous waste program implemented at both landfills where we receive e-waste and used oil, illegal dumping is still on the rampage. It's very, very high. In addition to, we have an extreme difficulty trying to partner with someone or businesses in the States to receive our recyclable goods, including used e-waste and used tires. That's a challenge that we're working on right now, and hopefully we could come to some resolution in the near future. Plastic bags, plastic, like anywhere else in the world, it remains problematic within the Virgin Islands. A bill was passed a few years ago banning the use of plastic bags to include plastic drinking straws and to allow for the sale of reusable drinking straws. However, due to COVID, much of the plastic suppression was suspended, reducing the progress that was made a few years ago. Next slide. Inherited challenges. The historical management of waste throughout the territory in terms of waste separation has continued to be a deterrence territory-wide. The most difficult challenge is managing the territory's waste, is changing the mindset of our residents. We have become so used to not separating our waste. We put our cans, our bottles, our green waste, everything all in the same container, and once it's hauled off away from our residents, it's no longer our problem. This mindset has to change as we move forward in the future. There are various waste diversion programs that has been implemented, and we continue to implement that. In order to be successful in these programs, that mindset has to change. Another part of the issue that we have which is a great challenge to us, is to get folks to understand that we have gotten used to not paying for the disposal of solid waste within the Virgin Islands. And I think we're probably the only place in the world that does not pay for the disposal of solid waste. This has to change. In order for us to safeguard our environment, it comes with a cost for us to live in paradise, especially living in our geographic location where everything has to be imported. Likewise, everything that we do has to be exported, which is an extreme part of the cost. We could recycle plastic bottles, cans, and so forth, but as we collect these items, it has to be exported off island to a source somewhere in the United States. Next slide, please. Some of our up and coming initiatives. I am pretty much excited about this one. Through the Cdbg program, we are receiving approximately $9 million in grants for the construction of 5 convenience centers throughout the territory. 2 in St. Croix, 2 in St. Thomas, and 1 in St. John. Our bin sites in Concordia and Montbijou in the near future will be converted from bin sites to convenience centers. Similarly, our Smith Bay site and our Nazareth/Red Hook site will be constructing convenience centers in those locations as well. And not forgetting our site in St. John, Susannaburg, would also be a convenience center. We work continually to try to update our fleet. We just received 2 collection trucks, which helps us to better serve our community. Long-term wise, we are looking into developing a composting program that would allow us to divert organic waste away from the waste stream into this program, further reducing the disposal of waste in the landfill, thus further expanding the life of the landfill. Next slide. We have a grant from the Department of, from the EPA. We're working in conjunction with the Department of Land and Natural Resources. This grant is, I'm excited about this because this is a waste diversion grant that would allow us to divert green waste, C&D, used tires, and scrap metal away from the landfill. Now, we already have a scrap metal program in place, but what this does for us is allow Waste Management to purchase equipment, and we can sort of revamp our programs so we could see a better cost savings in the recycling of scrap metal. When it comes to the used tires, we have a serious issue territory-wide. As soon as we bail and dispose of used tires, then here comes another pile again. So by the use of this grant, it allows us to basically purchase the equipment, set up a program where we'll have a continuous process of the removal of scrap metals from the territory. We have, we're excited to work with both DPNR, the legislature in implementing programs and kind of changing the laws in the Virgin Islands to better assist us in handling the used tire problem that we have. Again, with the green waste, we are bringing in grinders and trommel screens that we could take the green waste that is deposited daily at our landfills, divert it from the landfills, and create compost or mulch or something that could be used to boost up the agricultural arm of within the territory. In conclusion, WMA is continuing to preserve paradise efforts through waste diversion, best practices, and new initiatives. We are working and partnering digitally to work towards these goals. With the community assistance, all these things are possible.
Thank you so much for that presentation, VI Waste Management and Alex Bruni. So in the interest of time, from UVI Caribbean Green Technology Center, I'm just going to talk about who we are, but not get into the details, maybe in another week at one of those webinars so that we can have time for questions. So really quickly, our main goal is to develop, promote, and help implement green technology in order to promote sustainable development and the well-being of our communities here in the territory. And ways that we do this is through research and data collection and also community outreach. And so we're really happy about this partnership with Waste Management, DPNR, and EPA, things like organizing this webinar series and helping to organize it, working on plans for the territory, and things like the waste audit, which we'll hear a lot more about next week. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into more detail, but I'd like to open the floor to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hopefully the presenters can all, you can turn on your video so people can see you or just be available for questions. So yeah, the floor is open.
And if you have a question, please turn on your camera if possible, and then go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, Jason.
Or good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for making this presentation. I think it's very important to get the information out to the community. I'd like to thank all of the participants. My concern is a number of years ago, there was a fee, a user fee that was discussed, and it had gone through the process of the public hearings throughout the territory. This applies to our solid waste specifically. What is the status of that? Because I believe the PFC has already allowed this to go forward. But again, I heard Mr. Merritt speak at the legislature saying that there wasn't a quorum being established for the Public Service Commission to allow this to go forward. It was filed in December. Is this true, and where are we right now?
That is true. We are still waiting for a quorum from the PSC. If you could imagine that Waste Management has gone through a couple of changes within the past several years, and we had to reapply for to the PSC for the fee. So we're waiting a response from them, and hopefully that'll be done pretty soon, and we can implement those fees, bring it into our coffer, which will help us to expand the services of waste management throughout the territory.
And will those funds be directed in some portion towards recycling, towards waste reduction, et cetera?
It will be directed to the operations of the whole waste management operations.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Mr. Wikrama Harris, good morning,
hi.
or good afternoon. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I have a question on the PSC quorum. Is the quorum issue because of lack of appointed members, or they were not available for a meeting?
I am unaware, can't comment on that.
Okay, if so maybe that if it is lack of availability of the members, then maybe we need to tell them to do the meeting virtually and get everyone to vote. Like I believe at Waste Management they do that, and at other organizations they do that, and so PSC need to step up and help Waste Management. And we got a good leadership there, and they want to do the right thing, but if government entities are not supporting, it's not going to help to collect the fines. To my vague recollection, I believe the PSC passed the collection many, many years ago. Maybe Gwen can attest to that as well. So it's a matter of implementing it, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's something that definitely waste management can follow up on. So yeah, we can try to investigate more of this question and bring it next week when we for our second webinar. Thank you so much. What's that?
I have one other question on would waste management plan do so separation, like so consumers can put plastic in one place and the aluminum in another place, so we can collect it separated, so it'll stay away from the landfill. Is that something you could think of for the future?
I missed the first part of the question.
The question is whether or not
separation by consumer.
Separation
by consumer.
We are currently working on an integrated solid waste plan, and that would be considered as part of that plan. We'll look into it.
Thank you very much for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
We have a question for Ms. Gordon, Vanessa Gordon. Go ahead with your question.
Oops. Sorry. Hi. Thanks very much for having this. This is a question from Bermuda. Actually, I'm not in the USVI, and it might be beyond the scope of today's conversation. But I wanted to just raise the topic, and maybe it'll be covered in a future talk. But we are seeing an increase in electronic vehicles here in Bermuda. I think it's a 22% increase in the presence of EVs on island over the past year. And we are looking at the secondary market for use in the solar industry here, that obviously they are going to eventually need to be shipped off to the US for recycling. We're just like you, an island, and we're even more isolated than you all are. So have you guys given any consideration to what you're going to be doing with EV batteries when they come to end of life, and or the secondary market there? And can you shed any light on that, or is that something that we can discuss in a future talk? Because it sounds like everyone today is very localized, and I don't want to take away from that train of thought, but this is my big question as a solid waste manager in another jurisdiction.
For the most part, many of the battery retailers here on island, once you purchase a battery from them, they keep the core and they dispose of it, or they send it back to, I guess, their source. So we don't really have a severe battery problem that we had in the past. But it's something to look into, because there's still one or two stragglers that's out there. So it's something for us to look into, and I'll take note of it. And hopefully, I think my contact information is probably on there. You can contact me separately, and we could go over this privately at some later point.
Thank you so much. The next question is Pamela New. Pamela, go ahead.
Good day. Of course, my question is with regards to education. Mr. Bruni, I think, specifically spoke to the resistance to change, and in terms of changing our behaviors. And I'm asking, is there anything being done in the schools by WMA in terms of educating the younger ones, which hopefully will help parents change their behaviors?
As part of our waste diversion program, we have funding in there for education and advertisement and so forth. So that is being worked on as we speak, and hopefully you should be seeing something pretty soon coming from us. Like I said, I'm excited about it. This is the way of the future, and from henceforth, there's no looking back. We're going to do what we have to do.
Good afternoon. This is Charmin.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Charmin.
Yes, good afternoon. This is Charmin Springer, Public Acting Public Affairs Officer for the VI Waste Management Authority. I'd just like to chime in a little bit to respond to Ms. New's inquiry. Currently, I know Mr. Bruni spoke to the waste diversion and what's in that plan, but we do have education component, which is we have 2 environmental educators, Ms. Sheena Ritter and Mr. Bradley Thomas in the St. Thomas St. John district. We're hoping to get back a environmental educator for the St. Croix district. And the environmental educators have been doing virtual presentations at various events, as well as reaching out to the schools. For this season, we've been reaching out mostly to elementary schools and some high schools, public and private and parochial. So that's ongoing. So we do have that service available and those resources available. We just recently participated in the Earth Day Eco Fair here on St. Croix. That was a 2-day virtual Earth Day webinar. Both our EEs presented on, well, one presentation was on the 3 R's of recycling and the other on composting. So that is ongoing. And feel free to reach out to us if you would like a presentation at your school, and this is also available to the wider community. If you have a club, group, organization, your business, a government entity, or churches, ministries, please feel free to contact us. Thank you.
And just very quickly, I think also DPNR is doing a fair amount of work in terms of environmental education. In the interest of time, I will not let Mr. Carlwood talk unless he wants to say something. But DPNR is also doing a fair amount of work on this topic. Ms. Brooks, Diane, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Diane Brooks. I do the plastic drop-off and recycling program on St. Croix for the last 3 years. We have also been working with 4 public schools for the last 4 years and making them plastic-free schools by bringing them the water into the schools and removing the plastic out of the schools. And those are elementary schools. So there has been a program going on privately done for the last 3 years. And we've just put 4 hand-free water fountain into the 4 schools we were doing with the Corona. And this is all done privately. This is not with a nonprofit. So there are things being done by your community doing the job that needs to be done to teach our children the damage plastic does.
Thank you so much for this, and so thank you so much for your work, Diane. The role of NGOs and other private group and nonprofit organizations is tremendous and very important for the sustainability of the territory. So thank you for your work, and thank you, Mr. Wickremine, and Jason for your work as well. Anybody else has any question? Okay, so Ariel, I will bring it back to you to close.
Oh, I do. Can I just chime in? This is Kimiko. We're going to be covering local as well as international efforts on sustainable materials management in our second and third webinars. So if there are some local initiatives, I don't know all of them, and I'm sure there are many out there that might be operating on a smaller scale that we may not be aware of. So if you could reach out to Ariel and Greg and just let us know a little bit more about your organization and what you're doing, because we would like to gather all of these initiatives together and find out more about them and how we can connect the dots and share resources and amplify impact.
And I put the email in the chat for those who want to reach out to Ariel, and I'm also going to put my email in the chat. Ariel,
yes, definitely reach out to us, because we'd really like to highlight some of the efforts going on in the territory that is not at the government not on the government level, but by the general community. And so I guess to close, I'd like to thank everyone who spoke today. I think that we learned a lot about how much really goes into this system, this solid waste system in the Virgin Islands. And it's, there's a lot of projects coming up for the future that we have to look forward to, but there's also a lot of problems that we have to deal with. And so I hope that this was educational, that people felt it was very transparent, and that we can really start to move forward into the future and really make progress on this issue. So I hope that you will continue to come to the webinars each Wednesday, where we'll be sharing a bit more information about the system. But the final webinar, this is really important because we're going to be kind of charting our path towards solutions. And so it's going to be a conversation, and we really encourage the community to participate, because we are part of this system. We all throw away trash. We are not zero waste, most of us probably. So we are part of this system, and so we need to also be part of the solution. Yeah, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ariel, for